Good to know.
Teamwork.
No slide.
No, because the time started. So it will take like a bit to set that up.
So we go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mark McCaffrey, and I'm a co-focal point and founder of ECOS. ECOS is the Education, Communication, and Outreach Stakeholders Community, and we are about 3 years old, so we're still developing our own capacity, and we're still growing, but our goal is to support capacity building around action for climate empowerment and all the related efforts of education, training, public engagement, public access to information, international collaboration and cooperation that are part of the Action for Climate Empowerment, or ACE, program. And just very briefly, I wanted to share a little bit about my own background. I was one of those young people that got very excited about environmental issues when I was growing up. I learned about the hydrologic cycle in primary school. I watched Jacques Cousteau television programs, and eventually, many decades later, I was focused mostly on water and water education, and from there I got involved with climate education about 20 years ago. So fast forward to 5 years ago, and I was able to attend a subsidiary body meeting of the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, meeting in Bonn, Germany in 2015. And there was a dialogue for Article 6 of the convention, which is all about those elements of education, training, public engagement, and so forth. And it was a fantastic dialogue, and I was excited about the potential for developing a supporting network to help the Secretariat and help the focal point people so that they can better deliver the teacher professional development programs, the community engagement programs that are so vital for climate action. So we asked the Secretariat if we could start a constituency or community, and just before the Marrakesh COP, we were given the green light to do so. And so ECOS was born from those early days 3 years ago. It seems like many years ago, but it wasn't that far back. And I think in those past 3 years, we've benefited from the guidance of a number of people like Miro Polzer, who's been instrumental in helping us through the process, which is often complicated. So we are now reaching the point where we've started to develop enough capacity that we can actually help others with their capacity building efforts. And we have a vision perhaps of next year having a pavilion at COP26 in Glasgow. There's many, many things that we're doing between now and then. So please visit our website, climateecos.org. I think the one other thing I want to share with you that I find personally exciting is the idea of scaling our efforts at a kind of a community level. Of course, the United Nations is focused on national levels, and nations vary in size from over 1 billion people to a few 100,000 people. And yet, we're finding from research that actually there's kind of a sweet spot for climate action of around 100,000 people. So one of the dreams for this pavilion in Glasgow would be for us to have a GIS kind of map, a geospatial map, that people could drill into their neighborhood, their community, and see what the climate challenges and risks are, but also be thinking about who are the stakeholders at that local level, what are the good programs that are already happening there, and I think that could help us in rapidly advancing climate action forward. So I think with that, I'd like to turn to my colleague, Laura Weiland, who has been integral in the past year of bringing a lot of energy and guidance to this process as we have matured. And just, ask Laura if you could you share us a little bit about your own vision and your own background that have led you to be interested in ECOS.
Great, thank you so much, Mark. So as he said, my name is Laura Weiland. I'm the director of the Omega Center for Sustainable Living in Rhinebeck, New York, so upstate New York. And for about 10 years, I've been working with young people who come and visit our center and have been just kind of trying to gauge how much do they understand about climate change. And originally, it felt like it wasn't very much, and over time, it's starting to feel like it's more, but I've also been looking at how they're feeling about it, and it had felt like it was really, it just felt like this very, hard to understand thing that was very just, vague, and yet just this looming thing. And so I had started to work with Project Drawdown when it came out and was looking at a solutions-oriented approach to climate change. And as soon as we had something much more tangible to talk about, it was amazing what a difference it made in terms of how these young people felt and how they were able to engage. And so we've now hosted 2 years of the Drawdown Learn conference and just have so many partners coming together. So when I met Mark through this process, it was when I heard about ECOS and everything that was happening here, I've been so excited to get involved. For the past year, as he said, we've now been evolving the structure of this organization, and so we're working very much within the UNFCCC system, but we're also working outside of it. And so we have a core team of us that have calls every week or every other week, and so there's an operations team that's really working on this, and then we have working groups, and we're working on different things from the Doha Work Program submission coordination. We would love for more partners to be part of this. Also working on webinars, and as different members have questions, we can actually take those requests for information that people need, but also have people tell others about how everything is going. The other thing that's really exciting is that we're really now ready to take on more regional representatives all around the world. And so we've been here at COP25, we've been meeting so many different partners and really looking to have quarterly calls in the next year where we'll get to hear from all of you in terms of what's happening in your region, how it's going with the ACE National Focal Point, if you have one that you're connected with, and then also what are the organizations in your area, and feeding that information back, the successes and challenges, so that you can actually see what's going on in the rest of the regions around the world as well. And as Mark said, we're working on all different levels. So in my county, we're really starting to look at what would it mean to work with a group of people right there on the ground within the county, where we map out all the schools, and we actually know the school boards and the Chamber of Commerce and all the different local government, and we're working there. But if we have these groupings all over the place where we're seeing each other do that, then in the ECOS level, on the global level, we're actually talking about local action connected to the global strategy. And that's really the goal, is that nobody feels like their work is a drop in the bucket, but we see ourselves as part of this global community and strategy going forward. So there's so many different engagement efforts, and I wanted to pass it over to Isatis to tell us more about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura. As she said, my name is Satya Cintron, and I'm really, really interested in ECOS because it's a way to push forward knowledge and the truth of climate change. I'm a climate scientist, and often, so I work in the cryosphere, but I'm from Puerto Rico. So often I get the question, what is a tropical girl doing in the cryosphere? So generally have to explain my science and how I see it's connected, because I look at how glaciers melt and like how the air pollution helps on doing that. So I need to break that down for my community back in Puerto Rico for them to see some relevance. And we know that we are connected through sea level rise and all of those things, but often we get these IPCC reports that are a great effort, and often with my colleagues, we often think about communication, because we have a group of PhD students. I'm a PhD student, and we're reading the IPCC report, and we're often talking to ourselves, asking, do you get that this is saying this or that? And this is among scientists. So if we are going to have an effort on communicating science to community, we definitely need to bring more educators and communicators to the table to figure that how is that working. And outside of my climate science hat, I have like an engagement hat between like the NGOs. My NGO is part of the NGO I work. It's called CCE, so it's climate citizens climate education. So that is part of ECOS, right? ECOS is a network of networks, and in that sense, we are very, very interested in engagement and bringing non-stakeholders into the table, because often so many diverse voices are left out, and we want to make sure that we bring everyone to the table. And ACE, that is the Action for Climate Empowerment, has 6 elements, and some of these elements are public access, education, engagement, and how can we support that and enhance that between our regions. So we're trying to, as my other colleague said, of building this network of people that are connected through their areas, and that can help us better understand how the ACE strategy is working and where are the gaps that we can collectively fill. And that makes me really, really hopeful, because I think education and that sharing of knowledge could really raise the ambition that we all need, because it's not only informing, but we think that it's a two-way street, so that governments can put the institutions to help citizens understand, but also can learn from the citizens. So on that topic, I think that I would like to pass it to Helen, and to tell us a little bit more about how these diverse voices and non-state actors can help bridge that gap.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Helen Maggot. I work with Tabtaba Foundation. That's the Indigenous Peoples International Center for Policy Research and Education based in the Philippines. So there are 3 things I want to talk about today. When we talk about education, I think it's good to go back. 25 years ago, we had the Rio Summit, and we had climate change negotiations. 25 years after, we come here and we still have the same questions, and actually it has become worse. Now we are in a climate emergency. Where did we go wrong in terms of education, in terms of awareness? Second, we need actors, different actors. When we talk about education and awareness and communication, are there the same actors? So for example, on the one hand, you have indigenous peoples who have not contributed to climate crisis, but are doing a lot to adapt and mitigate. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have other actors that know better about climate modeling, climate science, but they see it as an opportunity to pursue business opportunities, for example. So in terms of, and third, in terms of approach of awareness and also making education work, do we use the same approaches for these different actors? So my organization is hosting a loose network called ELATIA, which means global neighborhood of indigenous peoples in action. It's composed of 18 indigenous peoples organizations from around the world, from Asia, Latin America, and in Africa. And we come together, we have regular coming together to share about climate impacts, what our individual organizations are working at the local level. There are communities that work on climate adaptation, cross-cutting with mitigation, how sustainable livelihoods may be improved for indigenous peoples to combat climate impacts. We also have a training institute, which is called Elatia Training Institute, which calls together indigenous peoples from different parts of the world to learn how to be able to shape their national and local policies, and also to learn how they can better influence the United Nations, for example, and other international mechanisms. So when we talk about education, and also awareness and communication, I think having this platform and also a space like what ECOS is trying to provide is a really good space to put all together all of these actors, women, youth, indigenous peoples, states, funders, and also the private sector to come and learn together, because then at the end of the day, we might know we are all aware that we have a climate emergency. But at the end of the day, how do each of these actors really behave and also make some changes in how they operate is the most important thing. So to speak more about why we should be engaging in all of these spaces, I'd like to Timothy to add on this.
Thank you, Helen. I'm Timothy Damon, founder and president of the Global Youth Development Institute from the United States, and also a member of ECOS. And we've already mentioned the importance of bringing these voices into the process, and this is very much at the core of what GYDI's work is. On our website, you can read more about the past Global South scholarships, Action for Climate Empowerment Youth Forum that we were organizers of, along with many partners, and also current projects that we're having. But the key thing then is when we are helping people to bring these voices to this space, what are we bringing to the table that is going to be constructive and help to push this entire process in the direction that it needs to go? Because for those who are following COP25, there is this large sense of we're not delivering on what we should be. But we have been seeing progress so far on Action for Climate Empowerment, and this is coming in the form of the negotiations that we are informally preparing to have next year, not here at COP25, but back in Bonn at SB 52 in June. And that will be where parties need to decide what the future of all of this important work that we're talking about will be, because that work has been guided for the last 8 years by the Doha Work Program from 2011, and it's now going to expire. And we need to make sure that the next work program that we have, because that's not an option, we must continue this work with another work program, contrary to what some parties might prefer to see. But we will have an even more robust work program, and we really need all stakeholders bringing their ideas and views and suggestions into that process. And to facilitate that, you can mark down in your calendars that February 15th of next year is the deadline to make submissions. ECOS is making a submission. Youngo, the youth constituency that I also work a lot with, will be making a submission. Our individual member organizations will be making submissions. Everyone can and should make submissions. And these should be both aspirational and bring in concrete actions that parties could really take to move this forward. And that's also what we're developing in ECOS with all of the expertise that we bring to the table and as practitioners in these areas. And then all of that will get synthesized, and we're going to go to Bonn and really work as much as we can to make sure that that is elaborated well and that parties don't have a chance to just kick the can down the road. You know, there's many competing priorities that parties have had over the years that maybe they can explain why ACE hasn't been higher on the agenda, but this this year really needs to be, and going into next year needs to be, the Action for Climate Empowerment year, because how will we raise ambition for the NDCs if we don't educate people about why we even need to take action in the first place? Or how can you talk about a just transition if you don't have education and training that would support people to switch occupations or change into new ways of living? So ACE really is at the core of realizing the ambitions of the Paris Agreement, of the entire convention. That's why they included it in 1992, all the way back then. And we are here to be supporting all governments, all other stakeholders to be part of that. And if there are any questions, I'm very happy to get into more of the technical aspects of, what we think is or isn't working well from the Doha Work Program, what are some of the concrete recommendations that we have. But ACE needs to be getting financed, which hasn't happened yet. Young people need to be given a stronger mandate and role, such as by having ACE youth focal points to be included alongside of government focal points, and not even every government has their focal points yet. We only have 108 parties with them so far, and not all of them are well resourced. So these are the kinds of concrete things we're bringing to the table as ECOS and through our organizations. And again, we invite all of you to very much be part of that effort, because we need everyone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Timothy. I would like to also acknowledge the good work of the Center for Environmental Education in India, because they've also been working to try to help facilitate this process of responding to the review of the Doha Work Program. And so we encourage you all to take a look at their website, Center for Environmental Education, because they have a lot of guidance, and they point to some of these background documents that are important as you understand the process of responding about the Doha Work Program. So I think we have a few minutes for questions or comments from the audience, if anybody has anything to add or any questions that you might have? Yeah. Miro?
So, my name is Miroslav Ports. I'm with the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, and we are a proud member and partner of the education and communication and outreach stakeholders communities. First, congratulations to your great work. What I wanted to comment and to add on is, Mark has already briefly mentioned it, that we are thinking of pavilion, a new type of engagement and innovation space, and our organization is also involved and co-founding member of the digital innovation community, and we are now working on setting up a digital innovation pavilion, which will have a physical manifestation at COP26, but also a manifestation in the virtual world with consultations and participation opportunities based on the internet. And just to give the advance info that we will also try to put this into the next generation of the Doha Work Program, or whatever this might be. And this could be really somehow one of the flagship initiatives of the next generation of action for climate empowerment, and we are looking forward to work with ECOS on this.
Great, thank you. Anybody?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention in terms of how to become part of this. So we have the website is climateecos.org to get more information, but also that we're gonna also send out a survey. You can put in your information in the contact us, and we'll just to learn who wants to be part of any of the working group topics. We're going to also, and as Tim mentioned, we're going to be doing some webinars in January for Doha Work Program submissions, for the technicality of how to submit those, and also some of the different points that that might be helpful to make, and also for anyone who wants to be representing their region and being part of this, that you can really contact us to be part of that as well.
Anyone else?
Yeah, and tonight we have a reception, so everyone that wants to join ECOS or learn more about how you can become involved, you can join us at the UNFCCC Pavilion tonight at 8. There will be food and drink, so you can all come and have a great conversation with us and other people that are involved in ACE.
Thank you. This is Karthika Sarabhai from Center for Environmental Education. Thanks, Mark, for acknowledging it. We're working with ECOS and with the partner networks of UNESCO and anyone else who wants to join. I just wanted to emphasize how important it is what was said from the dais. Last time for the Doha program, when they opened it up, I believe they only got 7 suggestions coming from the community. And I think this time many of us, Mark, myself, and several others, said that we must get this information across the February 15 deadline. We might do a joint consultation in January and plus separate ones. I think there's no restriction on this, but I think it's important that all the points get covered, because during the 10 years, there is a limited amount of change you can do. And it's important that we get the program right, including really ask for proper funding for this program, because I think it's a very important part. Lastly, I wanted to say that education still remains somewhat an extra add-on feature. You don't see it in the main rooms, that it is a way of achieving the main targets. It's seen like a target in its own right, which there is a certain point to that, but we also need to see how education can make change in adaptation, mitigation, and other targets. And that is really not happening other than the education community itself. So I hope that with this we will see that happen. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for highlighting that. And just to completely agree that, the key points for a new work program are very much addressing the funding gap, addressing the lack of proper metrics and reporting for how do we even assess that we're making progress on action for climate empowerment. That's fundamental. And then what will be the mechanism to increase the ambition of a new work program? Because we won't be able to just, in the limited time of next year, get the complete answer. So in the same way as parties are meant to increase the ambition of the NDCs, how will we have in place a means for parties to increase ambition on ACE implementation during the next 10 years? You can't just have a 5-year check-in like we had a 4-year check-in for the last work program. That's not enough. We need to engage on this annually, and there's lots of ways that we can bring to the table for how that process can work. And really, again, to emphasize, ECOS would be having a common set of recommendations and really building those in a consensus-based way with the rest of the stakeholder community, and that will be much more powerful. And again, individual submissions can then echo it, and we're very glad to have you working with us in that whole process.
So thank you all again for joining us this afternoon, and as was mentioned, there's a reception tonight if you happen to be here at COP25. Otherwise, visit us and join us online at climateecos.org. We have a lot of work to do in the near future and for the decades to come, so let's see what we can do to make COP26 the Action for Climate Empowerment COP. Thank you.
Thank you.